Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Complete Creative, the podcast that helps you build and sustain a better creative business. And today on the show, we have Amira Valliani, CEO and founder of Glow.fm. Glow.fm is a membership community specific to podcasters, and I met her at Podcast Evolutions. You're hearing that a lot, I know, recently. I think this is the last or second to last person who I met at Podcast Evolutions, who I'm having on the show. But I saw her do a presentation about membership sites, drilling down on data, what works, what doesn't work. And I thought she would be amazing to have on the show. I happened to have a drink with her at one of the after-hour parties and found her fascinating and found her story fascinating. And I cannot wait for you to listen to her. Before we do, though, I want to remind you that I have a pretty cool website called The Complete Creative at thecompletecreative.com, which has tons of blog posts, courses, and the archives to this podcast. You can head on over to thecompletecreative.com and check it out today. We have a really cool free course about building an audience from scratch, which I think is very relevant to this episode. And you can head on over to thecompletecreative.com/audience and check that webinar out. It's 20 minutes. It's no time at all. And it will show you how to go from one to many very, very quickly. All right, let's get on with the show. Take it away, Amira. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here. My passion is really about helping people feel like they have a stake in their community and in understanding how they can really maximize that stake and have a reason to invest. And most recently, and right now, the way that I do that is through helping support people who create great content and facilitating an environment where people feel like they can and should support awesome content, because content is a huge part of what makes our democracy in our world works, and I want to be a part of supporting it.
Awesome. And for people that don't know, we met at Podcast Evolutions. You were doing a talk about building communities and monetizing them. Could you talk a little bit about your company and what you do and sort of how you started?
Yeah, so my company is called Glow. You can find us online at glow.fm. And what we do is we work particularly with podcasters who who want to monetize their audiences and build stronger communities with them. And so what we evolved out of was my own experience as a podcaster. I used to be a local news podcaster. And I reported on a topic that was very community centric about my city council election. And at the end of the first season, I'd built a really solid audience. They were excited. They wanted more. They wanted more content via the podcast. They want to connect with each other. And I wanted to go find basically a way to build a subscription model for this podcast where we'd, maybe paywall the content only for members and build a bunch of other cool community benefits around it. And when I went to go actually build that subscription model, I figured out there was no great way to build a membership model just for your podcast. And so that was the impetus behind Glow. We are purpose-built for podcasters who are looking for ways to be able to build and monetize their community. We're the easiest way for you to charge for and distribute premium podcast content just for your community. But on top of that, we have a bunch of other integrations that you can use to build a community email list, that you can use to invite people to your Slack channel. Basically purpose-built for podcasters who want to be able to really engage more deeply with their audiences and build really great businesses off of that.
Awesome. And I thought when we met, I thought it would be awesome to have you on to really do a deep dive about building a community and monetizing that community, because it's something that not every creative person, I was going to tamp it down and say like 99%, but no, every creative person I've ever met is attempting to build a community and keep a community happy and make it thrive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much that content creators want to do, and a lot of creators just want to figure out how do I build community? How do I monetize this? Like, how do I get people sort of ginned up around my work? And 100% of content creators we talk to want to build a community and they want to be able to monetize and do what they love for a living. I think helping content creators figure out like, well, why do people pay attention to you in the first place? And what could you build community around? And what aren't you thinking about? So I think a lot of content creators, a lot of content creators want to monetize and they want to build community, but they're not sort of asking the questions around like why people would want to build community around them and what they bring to the table.
Awesome. So I figure let's start with what people get wrong, and then we'll go to what people can do to build it the right way. So when you're out there talking to people about building their own community, what is it you think mostly that you hear that people get wrong about building a community? Or maybe their perceptions are off from what you imagine. For instance, I know when we did when you did your talk, you were saying that you can expect maybe 1% to 5% of people in your community to actually become a paying member of that community. So something like that would that you think is steering people in the wrong direction when they think about community.
I think the biggest challenge we have, and the most important thing that we often tell the creators we work with is building a website is not enough. Like just creating the login for whatever community tool you're using, and putting sort of a soft ask or no ask at all is not enough. I mean, you really need to, if you're serious about building community, and monetizing that community, you need to not just have the infrastructure in place. The infrastructure is the table stakes. You need to figure out why people come to you and how you can double down on that. So what you deliver on for that community. And two, you need to ask them to join you, and you need to emphasize that value prop to them. So you need to figure out why people listen to you. You need to tell them what else you do for people who sort of pay to be a part of that community to help better further that purpose. So we work with a lot of content creators who, maybe they set up a page with us, maybe they start a membership program, but what they don't do is get on air and tell people, here is the value of this program and here is how you're going to get more from it. They just expect people to come across the page and give them money. And you really got to figure out what is your value prop and how can you find that way to connect more deeply with your community members, so that they take that next step of supporting you. People want to support you, but you have to tell them why, and you have to tell them how, and you have to tell them consistently to do it.
I love that last point because what I usually find is people saying, well, I've got a Patreon now, or I've got a Kickstarter going now, or I've got a community I'm building now, and they do it once, and then they just sit back and wait for the money to roll in, and they're not actively engaging in a consistent manner.
Yeah, like all great things in life, community is compounding, and you have to work at it over time, and it takes years for this to come together. And you'll start to see satisfaction, relatively quickly if you are consistent, right, over the course of a few weeks. But you definitely cannot just say that you're building a community once and tell people to come, because if you think of it from the standpoint of all the different people in your life, we're all surrounded by so many different things, so many different people asking us to join their community, or to give more or double down. And even when we want to, we just forget, like how many times have you walked by a restaurant and say like, hey man, I'd love to try that place sometime, or heard a call to action for something in a podcast and said like, oh, that sounds interesting. But you forget because you're on the bus or doing the dishes. And so it's really difficult. But if you make that ask consistently and you tell people what the value prop is consistently, then you'll start to see more returns. So the benefits compound.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm currently in the middle of running this big Kickstarter now, and I'm reaching out to creators to ask them if they want to cross promote, like do a backer update swap or something like that. And the most often what I hear is, I don't want to overwhelm them. And I'm like, I don't understand what you mean by overwhelming them. Like, you have to hear things so many times for it to make any impact on you.
Yeah, it's such a good point. Like the studies have been done for fundraising, and this is any kind of fundraising, right? This is any type of asking people for money. Is you have to have 7 touch points. So your first touch point might be the introduction. Your second touch point might be just letting them know you're there. Your third update might just be an update. Your fourth might be another ask, but you have to ask people 7 times. And that is everyone. Those are the best fundraisers in the world. They're everyone who's ever built a really classic membership program. Like they have tons of touch points. Because getting someone to part with their money, even if they really support you, is difficult. They have tons of competing interests. They're distracted. And so you really need to make sure that you make that ask consistently.
Well, not only that, you mentioned something that I really want to drill down on a little bit, which is like you were talking about competing interests, and the truth is that like everybody has a ton of people asking for their money, that want their money and that they want to support. So in order to get get people to commit, you really do need to consistently be out there, not just giving great content, but then telling them why they should part with their hard-earned money for you and not somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you need to tell them, you need to demonstrate value, right? Like anything, you need to know when you go to a show, like you want to know what the reviews are and you want to know what the trailer is. And so giving people a reason to believe is incredibly important.
I love that reason to believe. Okay, so there's another part of this that I really want to get into before we talk about like actually how to build something from like the ground up, and that is this idea that because you have 100 people that like your Facebook page, that means I have 100 people who are going to buy my product and support or support my membership community. Could you talk a little bit about why that is a fallacy?
Absolutely. So I think the easiest way to say it is, the hardest thing to ask for is someone's money. And they say that the biggest price increase is not $1 to $100 or $1 to $1,000. It's $0 to $1. Like a like on Facebook's cheap, right? Like people dole those out as much as they want because they have them in unlimited supply. But a dollar, that requires a lot of friction, right? It requires someone to pull their credit card out. It has to mean finding them in the right window where they have intent. It has to demonstrate what they'll get on the other end. I mean, just think about how hard it is to like get you to pay for a 99-cent phone app. Like I think I've one app ever that I paid for is $5, and I use it every day, and I still am like, ooh, $5. Like I can't believe I did that. And so when you are trying to translate your likes, your audience into payment, you really have to think about the person on the other end and think about why they're listening to you or why they tune into you or why they went through the trouble of liking you in the first place and what problem you can solve for them. The amazing thing about creatives is like constantly putting new stuff in the world, cool stuff, like new ideas, pushing the limits. But oftentimes it becomes really easy to forget who the person on the other side of it is and what they're looking for and why they're coming for you. So if that person on the other end is coming to you because they like to be entertained, you got to be able to show them that like you have tons of other sources of entertainment out there, right? Like people can tune to cable TV, they can watch Netflix. You got to be able to show them why like the thing that you're putting out in the world is super entertaining and good for them and something they should shell out money for. Or for your work, Russell, like what you do really well is you demonstrate to people, if you invest in this thing, you're going to see money on the other end, right? Like you invest in this course or you invest in this landing page builder, you have a clear investment of $10, $50 or $100, but this is going to make you 500 or 800 or $1,000, and there's a clear road there. And so when you ask someone to shell out any amount of money into a product, you either have to tell them like why they're going to be entertained and why the entertainment differentiates itself from everything else. That's one, entertainment. Two, the information they're going to get and why that information is more valuable to them and unique to them than the information they can get elsewhere. And that means it's either liquid information, they can use that to try to make money, or it's just really valuable information for something that they're really passionate about. But those are the value props you really have to tease out. And I'll stop there. I could go on about this forever.
Please do. Let's go on with it for an hour. But one person who does this really well is Dan Carlin. I think at the end of his shows, he does hardcore history. And at the end of his shows, he's like, basically, look, it's $1. I'm asking for $1 from you so we can produce 4 hours of this show. It costs a lot of money. There's a lot of research involved. We do this. It takes 6 months of our time. And like, if you want more of it, like to get we need money to make this show even in the time frame that you want it. I think that he makes a very compelling ask. It's not a big ask. He doesn't quite go as hard as I just did, but he definitely makes it clear at the end of all of his episodes that that if you want to get more of this stuff, it costs a lot of money, and we could sure use your support so we can get it out in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I think like Dan Carlin does an excellent job. I mean, also public radio often does a really excellent job, especially sort of the famous ones like the This American Lives of the world. A lot of times what they'll tell people is, the sort of lore among public radio is like, make your asks long, like spend 2-3 minutes at the top of the episode or whatever it is, telling people all the stuff you went through to make the episode. And when you get to the ask, don't undervalue yourself. A lot of people say $4 is just the price of a cup of coffee. It's just the price of a latte. Don't compare yourself to that. Like, show people the blood, sweat, and tears it takes to get something done, and then tell them, like, don't you want more of this? Like, don't you love this? Don't you appreciate my time? Like the fact that I spent 5 hours doing this, and if I was working minimum wage, I would at least make $50 with this, but now I make zero. And really, I should make way more than minimum wage because it's a highly skilled job that involves the role of a ton of other people. And I'm creating something that you have decided is worthwhile to spend an hour of your time doing. And think about the other things that you spend for an hour of your time. Maybe you go to a fitness class and you pay $20 for that, or maybe you go to movies and you pay $20. Like, build comparisons of what else people value, and peg it against that. And don't be afraid to ask for your value, and ask for it early, and double down on all the work it takes to put into what you put out in the world.
Yeah, I love that because I was in a conversation with an artist the other day who was someone people would come to his table and say, oh, my daughter can do that, or my brother could do that, or whatever. And he said, doesn't that ever happen to you? And I was like, it literally does not happen to me, because I make it very clear that no one can do the thing that I do from the beginning. Like my books, there's a reason my books are hardcover and I'm so meticulous with them. And it's because when I go to people and say, hey, do you like the meticulous books that I make? Do you like how I comb over every detail, and like how the presentation, and then that requires money to do, and this is what it costs to make that, and this is what I'm going to charge to make that. And also people used to come to me and say, well, why don't you just do this for free? I would say, because then I would have to get a job, and do you want me, like, if I were to get a job, this would take me 10 times longer to make. So do you want it to take 10 times longer? And they were like, no, I want it tomorrow. And I was like, then I need to get paid for this thing. And that's like, the transaction is more, you want me to do this quickly, then I need to get paid for it. If you want it to take 3 years, then like, I guess I could do it for free in my spare time. But like, this stuff takes a lot of effort to do.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that oftentimes people undervalue is you're putting a good product out in the world, right? And just like if you go to a store or a restaurant, people know the difference between a good and bad product, and they know, they can tell if something's seamless and painstaking and really good, and they can certainly tell if you put no time into it. And so if you're a content creator who puts a lot of time and meticulousness and care into the products you put out in the world, your audience values that. And there's a reason they come to you and they keep coming back to you, because no one wants to be on the receiving end of a shitty product. Like, why would someone spend their time doing that, especially if there's a bunch of free content on there? But if you're creating a really good product and it's valuable and people can tell it's really good, then your audience understands why they come to you, and they will pay for your product.
You made a really good point about that free costs. And I think that one of the big mindset shifts for me when I first started is to understand that like those people are downloading these free books that are mostly bad, and like it's taking them a lot of time to go through them and realize it's bad. If you can just convince them that like if they just give you money, you are going to make a good book or a good product or a good thing, and they don't have to waste all of their time going through these thousands of free books. They can just pay you for your time, and and you will give them something every single time that delivers. I think that's a really powerful message that I've been using recently, and it's been working really well for me.
If you set the expectation that by giving you money, you're going to give someone something good, not only do you have one good customer, you have a consistent customer. And so, prioritizing putting a really strong product into the world is incredibly important.
Yeah, you also were talking about public radio, and there's something else that public radio does really well, which is they have they have a way to do these pledge drives, right? They do these pledge drives 2 or 3 times a year, and all of their attention is focused on for a short amount of time just how much value they bring, and they're using all of their resources to show you just how great the thing is. And because they're doing it and kind of their entire company shifts to this one thing, it becomes a lot easier for them to like make it even more apparent during these short bursts that that this is something that you should contribute to for the long term.
Public radio is so fascinating, because they sort of organize their pledge drives into sprints, and they spend a lot of time sort of organizing their world around, especially if you're in the development side, around these sort of 6-week sprints that they do, really doubling down on helping demonstrate the value of what they do and trying to generate a lot of support, which is fantastic. I think what's really interesting about some of the other folks out there that aren't necessarily public radio is that they sort of spread these asks out over time, and they don't sort of consolidate all their asks over the course of six weeks. I don't actually know which is more or less effective. But the public radio model is really fascinating because what it tells you, if you have consistent audience and you don't want to spend a lot of time asking them to sort of step up, and you just focus all your work into a set period of time, your results can be really great. What public radio doesn't do, though, is they don't offer sort of extra content or additional benefits. And so it probably makes sense for them to consolidate all their asks in sort of 6 periods of time, because they don't want to spread all that work over the entirety of the year. Better just to make a really good ask for a short period of time and use that to reliably build up their donor base.
Yeah, well, it's nice when you're a creator, and most creators that I know have an aversion to money. I don't know why they have an aversion to money, but they have an aversion to like asking for money. So maybe if they were to just think of it as like, I'm only going to ask for money in these short amount of time, but really push it in this short amount of time, like they were like you do on Kickstarter or another product launch, then you can spend the rest of your time maybe not pushing so hard to like build the community, because you're doing these big sort of like new fan drives only a couple of times a year, while the rest of the time is made for your like less pushy asks or something like that.
I actually, that's an awesome point. Yeah, so many of the folks we work with have such an aversion of asking them money, and actually one of the most effective ways to be able to, boost your subscriber count really quickly is by doing it in a limited amount of time. And I love that idea of like, if you just really hate making asks for like the entire year, and you just tell yourself like, these are my 6 weeks, I'm doing it twice a year, and I'm gonna dedicate all my time to making sure those 6 weeks are as generative as possible, and then you can start to overcome some of those inhibitions around asking people for money, because it does feel uncomfortable, right? I totally get asking people for money. It can be really, really hard, and it's hard for me. But if you can build a compressed time over it, it helps make it a little easier because you can give yourself a deadline.
What it also does, so I used to have our 2 biggest courses would be open enrollment all year long. And what I found was the people who were doing affiliating for us, right, taking the course, like there was no trigger for them to like tell people how good it was, right? So we're we're testing this year. I can't actually say how it worked, but I'm testing this year, taking it off and only doing it in these small bursts of time, because it then can like focus not just the listeners who you are trying to get, but also the fan base that you have already accumulated to tell other people about it. And that is the piece that for me was missing from our biggest course launches, where we would make okay money when we were opening it up, but all of the other people who had taken the course and all of the people who were thinking about taking the course, there wasn't a time to like draw their attention in to that course, remind them what the value was and why they should sign up now. So it doesn't just help to get the new members in, but it also helps to take, I hope, well, for Kickstarter it works. Like this is how I have the model from Kickstarter. It's like for those 30 days, people are telling everybody about the book, and you're bringing in a new fan base. So I would assume you can bring this to other models as well, because what I really want is for those fans that already exist to go and bring in 2 new fans.
Oh, that's such an important point, is that it helps compress the amount of time that you can have a referral come in. And so it increases referral velocity, because you sort of compress the momentum down to a certain period of time, and people feel like they have to tell you, or they have to tell their friends before X date. That's cool.
Yeah, and you have so I know that in certain platforms you can have like a founder period or a certain period where you get extra bonuses for signing up. So even if you're not doing like a referral program, just like giving people some like bonus stuff as long as they get in during this 6-week period, or they hit certain marks during that 6 weeks period, could also be a way to like drive more people to sign up and to make your existing fans pull in 2 people, because that's like, for me, that's the secret. The secret is like, for me, is like word of mouth pulls in 2 people for every 1 person that I actually still have in my community.
How do you incentivize those referrals? Like, how do you think about that? What are the bonuses that you offer people?
So when it's with the courses, they have, it's 30, between 30 and 50% is what they get if they refer somebody. So I think that one takes care of itself. But for the books, the first thing when we do a Kickstarter is the book. But then when people get in early, they get like $50 extra of basically free digital content just for backing early and getting us to certain pledge levels. So it incentivizes them to pull people in, because if you don't hit a certain number, you don't actually get the book. I used to do this thing where I would pick, I would print off like a crappy version of the book, like a print on demand version. And I would say, look, here's the deal. Like I can go print this version tomorrow. It's pretty garbage, but like it can happen. But like, if you want it to be good and like beautiful in the way that like, I know you like it, we've all got to work together to make this project a reality, so that I can print it in hardcover. And in doing so, I'll also, if we hit these certain backer numbers, I'll give you a bunch of extra books or prints or other things. So that's the stuff they get on the creative side. On the business side, they get a percentage of whatever they refer.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it makes perfect sense, right? Like if you're taking a course and you want to learn something from it, and you paid a good amount for that course, to be able to get a good chunk of referring that course to someone else. One, you want to make sure the course is good, right? You don't want to refer your friends to something crappy. But 2, you're extra incentivized if you know that you can make some money off of it.
Yeah, the one thing that I have seen though is it doesn't work with creative projects to like do a referral, because people aren't there to like make money on the referral thing. They're there to make money usually on the business thing. Referrals work really well over there, but I've tried referrals on like, hey, if you bring a Kickstarter percentage, if you bring like, you can get 10% of whatever Kickstarter amount that you refer. And that has never, ever, ever, not even one time worked for me a little bit. Maybe it would work on a tech product or something more like consumer driven, but like on comics and books and such, the thing that works for referrals is like more books, more cool things, introducing you to more creators. Like that's the incentive, is to like is to like get the extra stuff and to make the product. So you don't need to over incentivize that piece of it. Just offering like an extra episode of your show, or you'll put out a big guest, or you'll offer like the bonuses at the beginning and end, or something like something extra. Uh, really, at least on the Kickstarter side, is the thing that really incentivizes them, not the money part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? Like if you're taking a course and you want to learn something from it and you paid a good amount for that course to be able to get a good chunk of referring that course to someone else. One, you want to make sure the course is good, right? You don't want to refer your friends to something crappy. But two, you're extra incentivized if you know that you can make some money off of it.
Yeah, the one thing that I have seen though is it doesn't work with creative projects to like do a referral, because people aren't there to like make money on the referral thing. They're there to make money usually on the business thing. Referrals work really well over there, but I've tried referrals on like, hey, if you bring a Kickstarter percentage, if you bring like, you can get 10% of whatever Kickstarter amount that you refer. And that has never, ever, ever, not even one time worked for me a little bit. Maybe it would work on a tech product or something more like consumer driven, but like on comics and books and such, the thing that works for referrals is like more books, more cool things, introducing you to more creators. Like that's the incentive, is to like the is to like get the extra stuff and to make the product. So you don't need to over incentivize that piece of it. Just offering like an extra episode of your show, or you'll put out a big guest, or you'll offer like the bonuses at the beginning and end, or something like something extra. Really, at least on the Kickstarter side, is the thing that really incentivizes them, not the money part of it.
Their why is like, I just love the way these stories are crafted and that they impact me. Like I'm here because I tune every Monday morning and I know I'm going to feel something. My heart's going to be warmed. I'm going to feel sad, and I'm going to connect with someone who has a completely different experience from me. That's like one really common type of why for public radio is like people want to feel something. Another might be people who listen to like Bachelorette Party or these shows that do sort of recaps of reality TV. And those, what the shows typically consist of is a couple of women, over a glass of wine, sort of recapping the latest episode of Bachelor or Bachelorette. And they're laughing through it. They're having a lot of fun. They're making sort of off-color jokes. And the reason why you listen to that is so you can feel like you're having fun with friends, right? Like you feel like you connect with those hosts in a way that you might, connect with your girlfriends when you go out of a bar. And you just do it because you like them. Like you like those hosts as people. You feel like they could be your friends and you just want to hear more of them. That's your why. It's like you like them as people. A third reason, or a third type of podcast, might be one where maybe akin to your listeners. It's about talk about the writing process. And it's a show where different guests come on who are writers, and they talk about how they stay productive, how they thought about the arcs of various stories that they're writing, what their tips and tricks are, how maybe they got industry breaks. And the why there is I am a writer and I want to learn more about how other people do this to help my professional process. So you have 3 podcasts and 3 very different whys, right? One is just to feel something, to feel heartwarmed, to just get a generic idea of connecting with other people's stories. It's not necessarily about the host, right? Like I don't tune into This American Life for Ira Glass. I tune into This American Life because the stories and they impact me. Number 2 is I tune in because I like the host and it feels like hanging out with my friends. Like I tune in just because I want to have some fun, and I might be on my commute to work, but I like feeling like I'm at a bar with a bunch of people who I know really well. And number 3 is professional. Like my why is I want to figure out what other people are doing and learn from them and understand what I'm missing out on. And as one person, I might listen to all 3 podcasts, right? It's very conceivable that all 3 sort of are on my playlist and I listen to them consistently. But the reason why I tune in is very different. And so if I want to really double down on my audience and build a membership around that, I need to understand what that why is and double down on it. So for the third example, if you're talking about the writing process and people are tuning into you for professional reasons, a reason that people might double down and become a closer member of your audience is because you're tapping into that professional need. Maybe they want to find a community of other writers that they can share tips and tricks with. Maybe they want to go deeper into the processes of really famous writers and understand what drives them. And so they want more content. But you really want to tap into that professional why um, for that listener, as opposed to if you're talking about sort of the Bachelorette podcast, the why is I just want to have fun. So that person doesn't want professional advice. They don't want to probably hear about, how you watch other TV shows. They want more of you and they want to laugh more with you. So maybe just, taking your 1 hour show and keeping the recording going for an extra 20 minutes and letting them hear the host talk more and have more fun. Maybe that's worth it for the listeners and really feeling like they're a part of that community and friend group. But that's sort of how you think about the whys. Put yourself in your listener's shoes and really think about why does this person hear me and tune into me every week, and how can I give them more of the job they're trying to get done.
Yeah, when you were doing that, what I was thinking was the difference between Udemy, Skillshare, and MasterClass, because those are all three uh, websites where people are going to take courses, right? Or Lynda or something. But the why someone is going there is completely different. And the type of person that's going there is completely different. Or maybe more interestingly, the why is similar, but the person who's going to utilize a MasterClass subscription is very different from the person who's going to go to a class on Udemy, probably.
Exactly. Yeah. Ostensibly, you might do the same thing, right? Like ostensibly, each of those websites teach courses, but the way that they position themselves is very different in the content they deliver and the person that they're trying to market to.
Right. And the kind of course and the kind of new stuff they're going to bring in, because MasterClass and Skillshare, at least, are membership communities, and they're making their money by people buying a year membership or a monthly membership, or they don't. I assume neither of them make that much money on their single serving classes, because their thing is like take unlimited classes for $100 more, like $100 for one course or $200 for literally unlimited courses, as usually a pretty good giveaway that they're looking for, like like the membership part of it is what's driving them. And the kind of courses that like MasterClass is going to put together are vastly different than the one that an Udemy is going to put together, which are much more basic and full of subject matter experts, but not world-class people. Whereas the reason that I have a MasterClass subscription is because I want to hear about the process from Neil Gaiman or from Helen Mirren. Like, I don't even care if they're telling me something I know already. I just want to get into their head. Whereas when I go to Udemy or Skillshare, I'm actually trying to find a new piece of, like, it's less about the host and it's more about the actual thing that they're teaching me.
Right. One is more utility and the other is more connection.
Absolutely. So I think that there's multiple levels to get that why, right? And once you have the why, so let's say you've gone and you figured out what the why is for your community, how do you go about taking that thing and growing it to other, like, what have you found the most successful ways of taking that, like a small viewership and making it a big viewership, or taking a big viewership and making it bigger? Like, how do people that you've seen grow their viewership in the most successful ways that you've found?
Yeah, well, I'm a big champion of the fact that you don't need a lot of viewers or listeners or audience to be successful. You need a few people, 100 or 1,000, who really love what you do. And in order to do that, you just need to know what your niche is and really why people listen to you. And I think the way you figure out really why people listen to you is by running experiments. And so, one example might be, there are two tech podcasts that we work with. One is called Acquired, and the other is called Tech Meme Ride Home. And both are technology podcasts that talk about sort of news and events in technology. Acquired is a long form podcast where it comes out once a week, and they spend 45 minutes talking about a company from startup to acquisition. And Tech Meme Ride Home is a daily podcast where they go over the news of the latest thing happening in podcasts. And both are incredibly incisive hosts, both really similar audiences, but they both have different whys. And ostensibly, you might be able to say like they're the same why, right? Which is people want professionally to stay on top of what's going on in the technology industry and feel like they can talk smartly about it. So that's one layer of why. But the second layer of why is, people that acquired, they want to get really deep stories on the biggest companies and feel like they can talk, they're founders or venture capitalists. So they want to really be able to understand what makes certain companies work incredibly well. And they want really incisive stories about those companies. Versus Tech Meme Ride Home, they might just be people who are not founders, but like more broadly, people who work in the tech industry. They just want to stay on top of news. And so there you go, like one layer of why to the second layer of why. And by just keep drilling down on those whys and really nailing home like what the value prop is, the people who really love you will continue to keep spreading information about what you do to their networks. So ostensibly, each might be really niche, right? Like how many people work in Tech Meme Ride Home started, a while ago, years ago. Like how many people are commuting back from their jobs in tech and we're looking for a 20-minute daily podcast to fill their void? Turns out enough to make a pretty good business about it. And the people who do it are really consistent. Now, that business has a top, right? There's only so many people who are going to listen to that on their ride home. But the people who do are incredibly loyal. And he's able to build a really incredible membership and advertising business out of it. So I'm a fan of, instead of thinking about how to grow your audience, it's figure out like what really unique value add can you provide for your audience so that they will refer you to other folks.
I love it. That's the answer I was hoping you were going to give. So thank you for giving me the right the what I consider the right answer.
Absolutely.
So I remember when I was first starting this podcast, I was really trying to figure out what the format was going to be. So I varied it wildly. I had dailies, I had little tips, I had interviews, I had live shows, I had all sorts of stuff in there, and then I started looking at the ones that got the most downloads and the ones that had the most comments and the ones I would get emails about. And I started drilling, and the ones that people would come up to me at shows and talk about. And that sort of became the thing that I gravitated towards because those were the ones I was getting the best response from. And I still sometimes do the other non-interview shows, but almost all of my shows now are interviews because it's the thing I like best. And it seems to be the thing that the audience has responded to best over the years as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the right way to do it is like figure out what people are responding to and keep doubling down on that and honing it and let your audience tell you what they want.
Yeah, I listened to a show and they changed their format completely, or they did an interview show one week and people were like, hey, do you want to see more interview shows? And the next week they were like, we are not going to do any more interview shows because you guys were very clear that is not what you want from us. People will tell you, like I always say, like when you want to know who your audience is, like ask them questions. Like people are voracious to tell you what their opinion is if you let them.
For sure. Yeah. You just got to let people tell you what they want. So what we do is we are the easiest way for a podcaster to be able to build a membership program. And the reasons we're easier for podcasts in particular is we're purpose built for podcasts. So we make your listener experience so easy that all they have to do is hear a call to action, press 2 buttons, and then they're done. Then they're subscribed to your program. So they don't have to create a new login. They can pay using Apple or Google Pay, so they don't even have to take out their credit card. And if you're offering extra content, they just tap one button and that content is delivered straight to their podcast player of choice. And so if you're a podcaster and you're thinking about how do I start a membership program or how do I let my listeners pay me directly for content, we're an excellent resource to go to. One, because that's exactly what we specialize in. And we're the best in the world at knowing what content people are willing to pay for. And two, we just have an excellent product for you that is super accessible, super easy to use, and you can sign up for and launch in 10 minutes.
And I saw it. I've seen it in action. It's awesome. You just open your podcast app and like whatever the bonus content is just comes right to the iTunes or whatever feed you're using. So where can we find it?
Yeah, It pops right up. It's at glow.fm, glow.fm. And so, you can go there, you can take a spin and check out the product. If you want to talk to me directly, my name takes a minute to spell, but maybe it can be in the show notes. I'm at Amira Valliani. You can find me on Twitter. And you should just feel free to message me directly, tweet at me, ask me questions. But it sounded like you have a lot of content creators, a lot of people in your audience who are thinking about maybe selling premium audio content. Either maybe you're thinking of selling an audiobook direct to consumer, or starting a membership program for your podcast, or you're thinking about turning some of your writing into audio. And we would love to talk to you to help you do that, because we know the space incredibly well. And a lot of content creators are transitioning to podcasting right now, or trying to figure out how it all works. And we're here for you to do that and understand how to monetize your podcast.
Awesome. Last thing, best piece of advice that you've gotten, and then we'll say goodbye. Or best piece of advice you would give to someone trying to start membership right now, besides go to glow.fm.
Best piece of advice to someone starting membership right now is think about what your listener wants, and then create an outline of 4 or 5 pieces of content that you can give that person to fulfill their need. And just get it down in bullet points on paper. And there you go. You have your first scheduled bonus content all planned out already.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amira, for stopping by.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and hope you stay healthy through all this.
You too.
Take care.
So that was Amira Valliani from glow.fm. If you like what you heard, go and check her out on Twitter. Check out the product if you're a podcaster, and let her know that we sent you and how much you enjoyed what she had to say. And if you want to build your own audience, you can head on over to thecompletecreative.com/audience and check out our free audience building webinar today. And while you're on our site, maybe like, subscribe, and review it. That'd be pretty cool. Very cool. All right. That's it for me. Talk to you next time.